magical fairy will do it for us.
Do you think if we just let it sit out there, it'll just finish itself?
Yeah, I think so. Magical fairy will probably come over and do it for us.
Some of those new electric cars, they just drive in the garage by themselves.
Mm-hmm. And then
What is it called? The summons mode?
Summon mode, yep.
Yeah.
They summon their owners.
Come here, girl. Come on. Come on, fire up. Drive in here.
Oh, man.
I guess we're gonna have to push it.
Yeah, man.
Alright. Let's push it. Come on.
Ah.
Ready?
I was gonna do that, but I probably would have ate it.
You excited? I'm excited. Oh, God. That's why we call her Big Booty Judy. Woo! It's getting. Alright. You got a tire shock?
No. There you go. Ow, slipper.
Alright, let's get the hood off.
Ow. Good thing this thing's not steel.
Right.
Yeah, I know. This thing would be very difficult to lift.
Alright. First night of officially working on Big Booty Judy. So tonight, our goal is pretty small. I have the mid plate mocked up in here, bolted to the motor, or not mid plate, motor plate, and the tabs are all built. So I need to remove some paint from the chassis, paint from the cage, TIG weld those in. Then we want to take the electric drive water pump off. We're going to put a mechanical pump back on it with a cert pulley. So if we pull off making it to that drag and drive deal, I don't have to rely on that electric pump the whole time. And I actually think I have everything we need here. This car hasn't had an alternator or a pulley or a belt on it for many, many years, but I got some stuff. So I borrowed this pulley off the Ultra 4, which I'm just using it for the circumference to make sure that diameter works. And if it does, I'll order one that's just a single pulley, not a dual. I have 3 alternators for the Ultra 4. This one we've ran the most, so I want to replace that anyway and put a brand new one on. And this pulley here is also a SERP. So I actually have the original alternator bracket, and there's another bracket under somewhere. But anyway, I have a brand new water pump sitting here that's already painted. I got a brand new set of ARP fasteners and gaskets. So yeah, let's just clean that stuff off, TIG weld it in there, and then we'll start putting a water pump on. Yeah. All that stuff. Okay, mark it out. Mark it out, Trout.
Hey, you're not 20 anymore, okay?
That tool's not even in here.
Yeah, very smart. I need a pen.
The white paint pen is right there.
Oh. Look at that.
Well, that water pump most definitely is not going to work. So went up and got another one, got one for a big block. Okay, so I'm sitting here editing this clip and realized that I accidentally deleted off of the memory card the video that was supposed to go in here, and I'm bummed because it was super funny. So I'm mentioning that we tried putting a different water pump on. Well, what happened was I had a water pump here, and I grabbed the water pump. It's already painted, pulled it out of the box. I'm trying to put it on. I look down. I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Why? How did I even get to the point of thinking I had one, knowing that it was for my 388 small block that goes in the race Jeep, not for this big block. So that's kind of why I'm rambling on about this water pump not fitting. And it still makes me laugh because I'm like, I just can't even believe that I went through the process of going into the engine room, grabbing it, grabbing all the bolts, coming back out, almost glued gaskets on it to put it in. So anyway, this is a better way to explain it. It just makes me laugh. I can't believe I did that. But picked up a water pump, picked up some parts we need for the rear wing, picked up some bolts for the engine plate, the motor plate in the front, got the right length stainless bolts for the water pump that goes through the motor plate. So we got some stuff mocked up right now. Putting the mechanical pump on, putting an alternator on, and had to make a spacer down in behind the pulley to compensate for the thickness of the motor plate. Last night I made a new lower alternator bracket right here. And then now I'm going to work on a upper bracket so we can actually put the belt tension on it. And then we picked up a couple other things too. So one of the shops that we do a lot of fab work for, they sell a lot of aftermarket parts as well. And he had a D'Oreilly fan in stock with the shroud. Picked up a bunch of stuff from Tacoma Screw, just all the, the little miscellaneous bolts. And the only reason I'm changing a lot of this stuff, like from the electric water pump to the manual pump, is I mentioned we want to try to do this drag and drive thing. So the radiator that we ran previously, it kept the big block previously cool, but we're talking, staging lanes, blast, come back, you turn the water pump, you leave the water pump and the fan running while it's sitting there with a battery charger on it. Never had heating issue. But if we're going to try to drive this thing, and luckily he normally sells all of his radiators for AMC applications, but he had a return for one, and it was actually made for a Chevrolet. Check that out. I couldn't freaking believe it. So did not have to order one. Was able to just go up to my buddy's shop, who I build parts for, and was like, yep, I'll take that. So need to get the upper alternator bracket made, and that once that is built, we'll be able to pull the motor plate off the front, do the final buff on all the edges, and grain it, put new gaskets on the backside, put it in, paint the water pump, put the water pump on, put all the pulleys on, put a belt on. Once that is 100% done, we'll move on to fitting the radiator. So that radiator is a little bit taller, and I already had modified this once before, but we're gonna cut out the bottom of the core support here, drop it down. I want the cap to be lower than the top of the core support so it clears the hood. So we got a couple things to fabricate. Got some more little teeny stuff on the way. New Moroso on-off switch, replacing that one. New charge lugs because I actually stole them out of this car and put them in the Ultra 4. And I think that's about all we got on the way right now. So we'll just cruise through a little bit of this fab work, nothing major, just all small detailed stuff, and then we'll paint everything really nice. Matt is supposed to come over and check out the wiring on this car. Now, if you watched one of the previous videos, you never know. Matt might show up, he might not show up, but I'm pretty sure he will on this one. So I want him to hook up the headlight switch again, brake lights, turn signals, all that stuff, parking lights. So that way, we can actually go take it for a rip on the street. Let's get building some stuff. Well, before I get building stuff, I actually need to build a mount to hold the GoPro, because when you're working on this thing, there's no external roll cage anywhere. It's not like the race Jeep. You can just click it to the light bar, click it over here, click it over there, click it up there, click it down there. There's all these options. So I'm going to take this little piece of 1-inch T-beam, and I have some 1/4-inch plate on the torch thing right now. I think we're going to rip out a little, I don't know, maybe a 6x6 rounded corners. We'll TIG weld that to the bottom. That should work, right? All right, let's get into drawing something here. So this is the bracket from last night. We're gonna get rid of that. And we're gonna save it. I gotta grab measuring tape. Perfect. There's just enough on there to do a 6x6. So we'll go 6 inch by 6. And then we'll go ahead and slurk some round corners on that thing. Let's put some big ones on it. 1 inchers. And then since we have the luxury of using a table like this, instead of measuring out where the tube is going to weld in there, let's just take a 1 inch hole, put it right in the middle. That makes it easy. And then we can just drop our tube right in there, weld it up, and we'll be back in business. No need to save that because the odds of needing it again are pretty slim. "45 inches a minute." There we go. She's ready to cut. That looks like a good spot to zero it out. Probably should measure it, but it looks good from here. I think that tubing's 7/8, not 1 inch. Well. Something like that. Nice little pole. Have a little base plate. I think that'll work. It might not work. You know, it's funny building this pole reminds me of some other poles I built when I was a young kid. They weren't to hold GoPros though. Nice, it's gonna work good. Doesn't even have to like be square or nothing either. It's kind of cool just throwing stuff like this together. Good enough for who it's for, boys and girls. So sometimes when you weld a plate on the bottom, I don't know if you can see this. Let's go this way. When you weld tubing into plate like this, it'll automatically pull that tube down in there, so you gotta give it a quick little sandaroo. So, should be able to take this guy now, set it about there. The GoPro will mount to the pole there. That's definitely not gonna work. Nice. So now, what I was thinking, got this aluminum motor plate here, right? I don't want to bolt just the bolt into the aluminum plate, so I think I'm gonna build a 1/4 inch tab that has 2 bolts that bolts to the motor plate. And then it is threaded, and then we'll machine a spacer that goes behind the alternator, so that when everything tightens up, it'll kind of sandwich the alternator between this bracket and the motor plate, and then we're not relying on just one hole in the aluminum with the bolt to go through and getting kind of, you know, egg shaped. This thing's gonna shake like a dog shitting peach seeds. We all know that. So we got to draw something up there, get it cut, do a little drilling and tapping, a little sanding, and yeah, I think that's gonna be the ticket. All right, so we got that mount obviously attached to the motor plate, and the alternator's mocked up. So now what we got to do is we're just gonna have to cut a piece of tubing that is the distance between the back of the alternator to that mount. And if you remember back on like older 70s cars, the little tube that runs between the alternator and the block had a little tab that actually bolts to the alternator. Those are actually super important and they work really well. It keeps the alternator from vibrating around. So what I'll do is go in here, measure from the back of the alternator there. We need to machine a piece of tubing that goes inside there. These will actually be a little bit longer, and they will have a like a tight clearance lock nut or a nylock on them actually. So this is threaded, but we're gonna run them out a little bit, put a lock nut on it. We'll do this in stainless. Then we have to come up with a way to come from this side of the water pump here up and attach to the top, so when we pull our belt tension tight, we can lock it in. So let's get on to making that tube. There's going to be a little piece of 1/8 inch that kind of wraps around the back of the alternator. We'll have to TIG weld that on. So let's get that bottom bracket done first, 100%, and then we'll work on the adjustment bracket on top. Other than the little tab we got to put on, and I can't really do that at the moment. So we need to work on getting a bracket built from here up. So we need to brainstorm what we're going to do for that. I do have one, but it's for a small block, so it's in a different orientation. So yeah, I'm gonna get out some cardboard, crank some dubstep, get something designed, and start building it. Okay, so I just went ahead and whipped out that upper bracket really quick and got it on. So the next thing that we need to do is on the back side of the bracket, between the face of the bracket and the face of the water pump, we have to TIG weld a slug in there to take up a gap. And then what we want to do is, once that slug is in right here, the bracket is at an angle. Let's see if I can get in there. The same angle as the water pump. So I'll go in there and basically put a little kicker in here on the bottom that puts pressure on that little flange right there on the water pump. And then that way, when you adjust the belt tension on this, you're not pivoting on that one bolt right there that you can, will be tight, but it won't be pivoting on it. So it'll actually kind of be, you know, rigid. So I'm liking how that's turning out so far. What do you guys think? Think that'll work? Won't work? Might work? I bet it holds on long enough to go 9 seconds at 140. Yeah, so it'll probably work. As I'm getting ready to fire up the lathe to cut this piece, I thought I should probably mention that little flap wheel trick on the lathe. Yeah, I don't recommend doing that. So if you saw that and you're like, oh, that's a great idea. It's not a good idea, it's horrible. Don't do that. Just finished up making a little bushing. That'll go right in here. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I can't do that. Hold the camera at the same time. You gotta mount the camera somewhere so you guys can see it go on there. AN fitting on the front of the valve cover, -10, is perfect for a GoPro mount, just so you know. There we go. So to ensure, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can run a bolt through this on a table and square it all up and stuff, but sometimes it's easier to just put it in where you need it. And then I'll bring the TIG welder over here and I'll tack it to the bracket. Then we can take it off, obviously put it on the TIG table and burn it in the rest of the way. And once this is welded on here, we'll be able to build that 1/8 inch piece that goes up here and that little kicker piece in the back that allows this thing to not rotate so much. But what I'm gonna try to do first is I'm gonna fully weld this. I'm gonna lock this thing down tight and I'm gonna see what it does through its motion to see if I actually need that piece on the bottom or not. All right, so I just tested that thing and I'll show you. I think we can get away with not putting that piece on the bottom. Let's try it. It stays stationary, and that is the same style bracket that I run on my Ultra 4. Let's see if I can find that one. It's a single bolt one. So this is the same system, essentially, right? One bolt, and that's it, and it arcs. And I mean, we've raced that thing I don't know how many thousands of miles or how many miles, and it never comes loose. So I'll show you. Right now, I just have this obviously snug, and the alternator travels down and back very easily. So I think what we can do is I'm gonna go ahead and just dress up the bottom of that bracket a little bit, make it look a little cleaner, and then we'll make that rib that goes across the top. And the rib across the top is mainly aesthetics. You know, I want it to look cool. And it'll give a little bit of rigidity for swaying back and forth this way. But so we'll get those two things done. And then I think I'm ready to jump onto this radiator program. I have enough time right now that I think I can cut the bottom of the core support out, block up the radiator where it's sitting, and I think I'm going to cut the mounts off the radiator. But anyway, we'll get to the radiator part in a minute. Let's finish up this alternator bracket combo, and then I can get it painted, get the water pump painted, get all that stuff bolted back on, and then we can move on to the next project, which is going to be that radiator. So there's the piece we need to TIG weld onto there. We got to pull this bracket, get rid of all the mill scale and stuff on there with some Scotch-Brite. Put a couple TIGs on that guy, and then we'll be able to call this project finished. there's an alternator bracket system, and I was gonna call that done, but there's one little piece we gotta finish. So we gotta pull the alternator off, and we gotta do a little tab that goes from the crossover tube to the back side of the alternator. We'll knock that out really quick. Then it'll be done 100%, ready to paint. Move on to the radiator. All right, alternator bracket systems, 100%. So I wanted to put that little tab in there I was talking about, and then when I pulled the alternator out to put that in, I realized way down there, that is the boss that is casted in the alternator that is threaded. So what I decided to do is I took the original spacer that I had made, the little chromoly one, out, and I just did a piece of 3/4 inch 120 wall DOM. So that way you can clamp down and bite that alternator on there a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna call that good 100%. So now we can move on to the radiator, which is right here. So I'm gonna see if I can get this thing out of here. I wonder if I can set this thing in here without messing it up by myself. That'd really suck. Okay. So in order to make this fit in here and clear the hood, I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down below on the bottom of the core support there where I'd already modified it once. And we're gonna have to tape up the front of the motor really good because it's adjustable belt drive. And I unfortunately have to get in there with a cutoff wheel, because I want to lower this whole radiator down a couple inches. And the side mounts that are currently on there, I'll probably remove them. Yeah, we'll just kind of work our way through it. I don't have like a set design on this already in mind other than the top that clamps it down. I know exactly what I'm going to do there, but we'll just have to cut the core support, put some blocks on the ground, get this set at the height we need, and then I'll leave the side mounts on it until we have come up with a solid solution on how to mount the radiator. So that is what we are on to next. So I can't really go much farther right at the moment until I have somebody come help me. I gotta put the hood on, have the radiator clamped into the core support. The factory tab that's down there, if I don't have to remove that, I don't want to. And the existing radiator that was in this car is actually taller than the one I'm putting in. But where the hood funnels down, it's wider by 7 inches. So with that other radiator being narrower, the cap was in a different location in the core support and it cleared inside the hood. So I'm gonna get everything cleaned up, see if I can maybe grab Tucker or something, and we'll set the hood on tape or clamp the radiator in there and crawl underneath there and make some measurements. And hopefully if that tab doesn't have to be removed, then maybe we can utilize that tab to bolt the new tray in. So yeah, we'll see if we can't make some measurements and see what we can get to clear now. So we have just enough room. I'm not sure if that's going to show up or not, but I think we're golden, dude. So let's get on to building a mount. Sweet, core support trimming is done, and as you guys seen, we test fitted the radiator, and I ended up cutting a little bit more off the core support. So now the bottom lip, other than that one factory lip there, is all gone. So let's get off some cardboard, make a lower tray. It's gonna be super basic. I think we're gonna bend up the front side, bend out the back side, throw some dimple dies down it, and then I have these rubber pieces that will go in it. So let's work on getting the base done first, and then we can set the radiator in and get onto the clamshell. We got our template from cardboard, this guy right here. Got that piece converted to this piece. All dimple dyed, bent, ready to go in. Now I chose not to put the holes in this first. There is some instructions on the core support we have to go around, and nothing's really on the same plane. So I think it's going to be our best bet if we just drop this in, clamp it in, figure out where we want to put the holes, and then just drill manually. So that'll go in there just like that, all the way across. And then in this flange right here, all the way across, not all the way across, there'll be 3/4 20 nutsers to go into the core support. And then down there in the corner, there'll be a couple more. So I'll get that mounted. And once that is bolted in to the car, we can set the radiator down in it and then get onto the last part of this video, which is going to be the clamshell. And I got a little surprise on that that'll I think it'll pop. It'll look pretty good. Sweet. I just pushed through, figured I would just hammer that stuff out and get it done all the way. It's not 100% done. It's all the time that I have at the moment. So in 2 days I will finish the radiator mount 100%, and then I'll tell you guys the list of other stuff we got to do. So this is the new radiator and the mounting system. Lower tray is mounted into the core support down there. So this bracket on this side, I'm actually going to leave on there. I got to do a new overflow that attaches to the top of the Detton Bear billet block on top of the intake and run it down. So I think I'm just going to leave that there. I'm going to build a really nice overflow, and I'm going to utilize that bracket 50%. So this is going to wrap it up on this video, and coming up next will be probably firing it up. There's some fab work left to do. Still got to do the transmission tunnel, still got to build a fuel cell, still got to mount the handbrake, but we'll probably do a little video of firing it up for the first time, bring it up to temp, then we'll pull the valve covers, retorque the heads, redo the valve lash and stuff like that. But as far as everything left that needs to be done, it goes like this. We got to get adapters for the valve covers for the pan evac. We have to install batteries. We have to install on-off switch, charge lugs. I need to build an air pan that hooks to the top of the Dominator that seals off underneath the hood. The one I previously had worked good on the last big block, but it was a 4150 carburetor. We need to plumb the handbrake. We have to build the transmission tunnel, sheet metal work, which is super easy. We need to get a passenger seat for Tucker, another Kirky seat, and a set of belts. Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy. We need to go through the wiring like I mentioned before. Matt's going to come over and see if he can get all that stuff working. The clutch is not here yet. We don't need the clutch to fire it though. All the adjustment dowel pins are here to zero in the Jericho. I need to get fluid for the Jericho. We're gonna run our carbon fiber drive shaft, and I'm gonna put new Zeus's in the hood. I'm probably forgetting a couple really small things, but that is the gist of it. So it's really, really close. And the saving grace in trying to be able to pull off this drag and drive is the rear end in this car is actually sold to a friend of mine. And I was talking to him the other night about this whole system, and he said, you know what, dude, just leave that rear end in there, go for it. And I'm like, you gotta be shitting me, that was so cool. So Mike Parker, huge shout out to him, thank you very much. If we break it, we'll fix it, but we're not gonna lean on this car on this trip. I mean, this car is capable of dipping into the really low sixes and eighth mile, you know, mid nines. But there's no starting line enhancer, there's no two-step, no nothing. So we're just gonna take it up to 3,500 RPM, let the clutch out, roast some gears. The index we're running is 650. So anyway, enough rambling on. Appreciate you guys following along on this build. And like I said in every other video, we're definitely not professionals, but we know enough to do it wrong.